What if I told you that one criminal organization controls up to 60% of all drug trafficking from Mexico to the United States? What if I said this same group has made billions of dollars, corrupted governments at the highest levels, and has survived for over 4 decades despite constant attempts to destroy it? Today, we're going to uncover the shocking story of the Sinaloa Cartel, one of the most powerful and dangerous criminal organizations in the world. From humble farmers in the mountains of Mexico to global drug lords making Forbes' richest people list, this is a story of power, corruption, and survival that reads like a Hollywood movie, except every single part of it is real.
For decades, the Sinaloa Cartel, under El Mayo's leadership, made billions of dollars.
To understand the Sinaloa Cartel, we need to travel back in time and across the border to a place called the Golden Triangle. This isn't some tourist destination. It's where the Mexican states of Sinaloa, Durango, and Chihuahua meet in the rugged Sierra Madre Mountains. In the early 20th century, this region was perfect for growing illegal crops. The fertile lands, remote mountain ranges, and proximity to the United States made it an ideal location for marijuana and opium poppy cultivation. Small-scale farmers started growing these plants, and by the 1960s and 1970s, they were trafficking marijuana and heroin across the border. But these were just independent operators, small-time dealers making a living. Everything changed when these scattered groups began organizing into something much bigger and more dangerous. The real story begins with the Guadalajara Cartel in the early 1980s. This wasn't the Sinaloa Cartel yet, but it was the foundation. The Guadalajara Cartel became one of Mexico's largest crime organizations, controlling much of the drug trade flowing into the United States. Several key players emerged during this time, names that would become legendary in the drug trafficking world. Among them were young men from Sinaloa, Joaquin Guzman Loera, who would later be known as El Chapo, meaning shorty, because of his height, and Hector Luis Palma Salazar. These weren't sophisticated criminals yet. Many came from rural farming backgrounds, but they had ambition, intelligence, and a complete lack of fear. Then came 1985, a year that changed everything. The Guadalajara Cartel assassinated Enrique Camarena, an undercover agent from the United States Drug Enforcement Administration. This wasn't just another murder, this was killing an American federal agent. The response was immediate and brutal. The United States government put enormous pressure on Mexico. They couldn't let this stand. Mexican authorities were forced to act, launching a massive crackdown on the Guadalajara Cartel. Leaders fled the country, and by the end of the decade, the once powerful organization had fractured into several smaller groups. This is where our story really begins, because one of those fragments would become the Sinaloa Cartel. When the Guadalajara Cartel broke apart, different leaders established their bases in various parts of Mexico. The Arellano Felix brothers set up operations in Tijuana. The Carrillo Fuentes family moved to Ciudad Juarez. But El Chapo and Hector Luis Palma Salazar, they returned home to Sinaloa. This decision would prove to be strategic genius. Sinaloa had everything they needed: established drug cultivation, loyal local populations, and experience in trafficking. They knew the land, they knew the people, and they knew the business. The Sinaloa Cartel was born. The early 1990s were the perfect time for the Sinaloa Cartel to rise. Here's why. The Colombian cartels, which had dominated the cocaine trade for years, were falling apart. Pablo Escobar, the notorious Colombian drug lord, was killed in 1993. The Cali cartel leaders were being arrested. The United States had also cracked down heavily on drug trafficking through the Caribbean, which had been the preferred route for getting cocaine into America. This created a massive opportunity. Someone needed to fill the gap, and Mexican cartels were perfectly positioned to do it. They had the geography, the networks, and the experience. Among all the Mexican groups competing for this market, the Sinaloa Cartel had a secret weapon: El Chapo Guzman. El Chapo wasn't just another drug dealer, he was a criminal innovator. While other cartels used traditional methods, El Chapo revolutionized drug smuggling with his most famous invention: tunnels. These weren't crude holes in the ground. The Sinaloa Cartel built sophisticated underground passageways with proper ventilation, lighting, and even rail systems to move drugs quickly and efficiently across the Mexico-United States border. Some tunnels were over 1 kilometer long, deep underground where detection was nearly impossible. The FBI was stunned when they discovered the first tunnel in the 1990s. It connected directly to one of El Chapo's safe houses. By 2010, another massive tunnel was found, then more in 2013. Each one was more advanced than the last, earning El Chapo the nickname the Tunnel King. His favorite location was Otay Mesa near California. It was close to the transport hubs of Tijuana and San Diego, surrounded by factories whose noise masked the sound of digging and had soft soil perfect for tunneling. Ground-penetrating radar couldn't even detect them because they were built so deep. Entrances were hidden under bathtubs, toilets, or in warehouses. But tunnels were just one part of El Chapo's strategy. He understood something crucial. Corruption was cheaper than confrontation. The Sinaloa Cartel became masters of bribery. They corrupted government officials, law enforcement officers, prison guards, and even military personnel. This wasn't small-scale corruption. We're talking about systematic infiltration at every level of government. How deep did this go? In December 2019, United States authorities arrested Genaro Garcia Luna, who had been Mexico's public security secretary under President Felipe Calderón. He was charged with taking millions of dollars in bribes from the Sinaloa Cartel. This was the equivalent of the FBI director in the United States working for drug dealers. This network of corruption gave the cartel protection and operational efficiency that their rivals couldn't match. They could operate with relative freedom because they had people on the inside warning them about raids, investigations, and arrests. Under El Chapo's leadership, the Sinaloa Cartel didn't just stick with marijuana and cocaine. They diversified their portfolio like a legitimate business. They expanded into methamphetamine production and heroin trafficking. When they noticed an increase in demand for heroin in the United States, particularly among people who had become addicted to prescription painkillers, they responded by flooding the market with purer, cheaper heroin. This was business strategy applied to criminal enterprise. By the 2010s, they had also begun producing and distributing fentanyl, the synthetic opioid that has become one of the deadliest drugs in the ongoing crisis affecting the United States. The cartel saw the market opportunity and seized it. The Sinaloa Cartel wasn't just operating in Mexico and the United States anymore. They established global reach, trafficking drugs to Europe, Asia, and Australia. They had distribution hubs in major American cities: Arizona, California, Illinois, Texas, New York, and Washington State. Their operations extended all the way to South America, working directly with cocaine producers in Colombia. Since Colombia remains the biggest cocaine producer in the world, controlling this relationship was essential. They also operated labs in Mexico, producing methamphetamine and fentanyl. But make no mistake, this empire was built on violence. The 1990s and 2000s saw brutal turf wars with rival organizations. The Tijuana Cartel, the Juarez Cartel, and later the ultra-violent Los Zetas all fought the Sinaloa Cartel for control of territory and smuggling routes. These conflicts turned Mexican cities into battlegrounds. Culiacán, the capital of Sinaloa State, and Ciudad Juarez saw thousands of lives lost. The violence was horrific. Beheadings, mass graves, and attacks on civilians became common. In November 1992, El Chapo sent 40 armed men to attack a party hosted by the Tijuana Cartel in Puerto Vallarta, killing 9 people. The Tijuana Cartel responded by attempting to assassinate El Chapo at the Guadalajara airport in 1993. But they made a terrible mistake. They accidentally killed Cardinal Juan Jesus Posadas Ocampo, a high-ranking Catholic Church official. The cardinal was in a white Mercury Grand Marquis, the same type of car El Chapo was known to use. The assassins opened fire, killing the wrong man. This incident brought even more heat from both the Mexican government and the church. What made the Sinaloa Cartel so resilient was its structure. Unlike traditional cartels with a single boss at the top, the Sinaloa Cartel operated more like a federation. It was a partnership of powerful traffickers working together. El Chapo shared control with Ismael Zambada Garcia, known as El Mayo, and possibly Juan José Esparragosa Moreno, nicknamed El Azul. This decentralized structure meant that if one leader was captured, the organization could continue operating. Semi-autonomous factions could coordinate, but also function independently. This flexibility allowed them to withstand law enforcement crackdowns and internal betrayals that would have destroyed other criminal organizations. In 1993, El Chapo's luck ran out, or so authorities thought. He was arrested in Guatemala and extradited to Mexico, where he was sentenced to 20 years in prison for murder and drug trafficking. But imprisonment didn't stop El Chapo. Through a combination of bribes and threats, he continued running the Sinaloa Cartel from behind bars. He had access to cell phones, received visitors, and gave orders as if he were still free. The prison guards were essentially working for him. According to reports, he gained full control of the organization by 1995, even while locked up. This showed the extent of corruption in Mexico's prison system. In 2001, something extraordinary happened. Fearing extradition to the United States, El Chapo orchestrated his first escape. According to reports, he paid approximately $200,000 in bribes to prison guards and officials. On the day of his escape, he was wheeled out of the prison hidden inside a laundry cart. Yes, you read that right, a laundry cart. It sounds like something from a movie, but it actually happened. Prison workers simply rolled him out the front door. For the next 13 years, El Chapo remained free. This wasn't a period of hiding in fear. He expanded his operations, built more tunnels, and solidified the Sinaloa Cartel's dominance. He lived in safe houses with elaborate tunnel systems designed specifically for quick escapes. In February 2014, Mexican authorities finally tracked him down. They raided his house in Mazatlan, a beach resort city on the Pacific coast. El Chapo tried to escape through a tunnel hidden beneath his bathtub, connected to an underground network of passageways. But this time, the authorities were ready. They caught him. The arrest was celebrated as a major victory for the Mexican government and President Enrique Peña Nieto's administration. International media covered the story extensively. El Chapo was placed in Altiplano, Mexico's highest security prison, supposedly escape-proof. The prison had special surveillance, no windows, and round-the-clock monitoring. They weren't taking any chances this time, or so they thought. What happened next became one of the most audacious prison breaks in history. On July 11, 2015, just 16 months after his arrest, El Chapo vanished. At 8:50 p.m., surveillance cameras showed him pacing in his cell near the shower area. Then he disappeared from view. 30 minutes later, when guards entered his cell, he was gone. They found a small opening in the shower floor, just 20 by 20 inches. It led to a vertical shaft going 33 feet underground. From there, a sophisticated tunnel stretched for over a mile, ending at a half-built house outside the prison walls. This wasn't just a tunnel, it was an engineering marvel. The passageway was tall enough for a person to walk through, equipped with proper ventilation, lighting powered by generators, and even a modified motorcycle mounted on rails for faster movement. One Mexican official estimated the tunnel took about a year to build. Workers had to remove approximately 350 truckloads of dirt and sand without being detected. The cost was estimated at millions of dollars. Here's the incredible part. The house where the tunnel ended had only been under construction for 5 to 6 months. It was never meant to be finished. It was just a cover for the tunneling operation. Local residents noticed it seemed suspicious that construction had stopped, but no one reported anything unusual until after the escape. There's no way this escape happened without massive corruption. Journalist Iwan Grillo, who has extensively covered Mexican cartels, said it perfectly. You cannot build a mile-long tunnel and get into this without some level of corruption. Think about it. They had to know exactly where El Chapo's cell was located. They had to dig for months without prison security noticing vibrations or sounds. They had to coordinate timing perfectly. Intelligence reports later revealed that the Sinaloa Cartel had started planning this escape immediately after El Chapo's arrest in 2014. The embarrassment for the Mexican government was enormous. They had insisted they could keep El Chapo in custody and had resisted extraditing him to the United States. Now he had escaped again, making them look incompetent or complicit. President Peña Nieto called the escape unforgivable. The prison warden was fired immediately. Investigations were launched, but by then, El Chapo was long gone. Mexican authorities launched a massive manhunt working with United States agencies. Checkpoints were set up throughout the country. Raids were conducted, rewards were offered, but El Chapo had disappeared into his extensive network of safe houses and loyal supporters. He remained free for 6 months. During this time, he made a critical mistake. El Chapo wanted to have a movie made about his life. He began communicating with Mexican actress Kate Del Castillo and American actor Sean Penn about a potential biopic. These communications exposed his location. In January 2016, Mexican Marines tracked him to Los Mochis in Sinaloa. They raided the safe house, and a violent shootout ensued. This time, there was no escape. El Chapo was captured. The Mexican government wasn't taking any more chances. By January 2017, El Chapo was extradited to the United States. He was tried in a New York courtroom in 2018 on charges including drug trafficking, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. Witnesses testified about the cartel's extreme violence and widespread corruption. In February 2019, he was convicted on all counts and sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. He was also ordered to forfeit $12 billion. Today, El Chapo is held in ADX Florence in Colorado, America's only supermax federal prison. He's in solitary confinement, allowed outside his cell for just a few hours each week in a small fortified recreational cage. His legal team has claimed the conditions have severely damaged his health, but authorities refuse to reduce the restrictions. There will be no more escapes. El Chapo's story as a free man is over. With El Chapo imprisoned in the United States, you might think the Sinaloa Cartel would collapse. That's not what happened. Remember that decentralized structure we talked about earlier? This is where it proved its value. Leadership transitioned to Ismael El Mayo Zambada Garcia, one of the original members and co-founders of the cartel, along with El Chapo's sons, known as Los Chapitos, the Little Chapos. El Mayo had been operating in the shadows for decades, avoiding capture through careful planning and extensive corruption networks. Unlike El Chapo, who became a celebrity criminal, El Mayo preferred staying invisible. Los Chapitos, Joaquin Guzman Lopez, Ovidio Guzman Lopez, and their brothers inherited their father's relationships and narcotic proceeds. They invested in marijuana, cocaine, and ephedrine supplies from Mexico, Colombia, and Argentina. They oversaw methamphetamine labs and managed distribution networks extending into the United States and Canada. Under this new leadership, the Sinaloa Cartel has become heavily involved in fentanyl trafficking, contributing significantly to the ongoing crisis in the United States. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid far more potent than heroin. It's also cheaper to produce and easier to smuggle in smaller quantities. The cartel works with Chinese suppliers to obtain precursor chemicals needed to manufacture fentanyl. They operate labs in Mexico where the drug is produced, then press it into pills that look like prescription medications or mix it with other drugs. Most of the fentanyl entering the United States comes through Mexico, with the Sinaloa Cartel controlling a major portion of this deadly trade. According to the Drug Enforcement Administration, the cartel is largely responsible for the synthetic drug crisis that has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. The Sinaloa Cartel didn't just survive El Chapo's imprisonment, it adapted. Based on estimates from a 2022 Congressional Research Service report, the cartel controls between 40 to 60% of the Mexican drug trade and earns around $3 billion annually. They've expanded beyond just drug trafficking. The cartel has become involved in the fishing industry in Mexico, both through legal and illegal means. They provide social aid packages to local communities, including food, cash, and supplies. These donations win support among the population and allow the cartel to continue operations with local protection. In some areas, the cartel even serves as an enforcement organization against robberies, helping to win public support. This is a classic strategy. Provide services the government doesn't, and people will protect you instead of reporting you. The cartel has also developed sophisticated money laundering techniques, including using cryptocurrency. In one case investigated by United States authorities, the cartel laundered more than $869,000 using cryptocurrency between August 2022 and February 2023. Then came another dramatic development. In July 2024, both El Mayo and Joaquin Guzman Lopez were arrested by United States authorities in El Paso, Texas. This wasn't a typical arrest. It was a betrayal from within. According to reports and plea agreements, Joaquin Guzman Lopez apparently lured El Mayo onto a plane, telling him they were going to inspect clandestine airfields. Instead, the plane landed in the United States, where both men were immediately taken into custody. This internal betrayal exposed vulnerabilities in the cartel structure. It sparked conflict between Los Chapitos and El Mayo's loyalists, with violence surging in Culiacan as different factions fought for control. In January 2025, El Mayo pleaded guilty to engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise and racketeering charges. He admitted to decades of leading the cartel, using violence and intimidation, and bribing government officials to maintain his freedom and power. Despite these high-profile arrests, the Sinaloa Cartel continues operating. Its decentralized structure means that even with top leadership captured, semi-autonomous cells keep functioning. New leaders emerge to fill power vacuums. The Mexican government continues fighting the cartels. In January 2025, the Mexican Navy, National Guard, and Secretariat of National Defense seized cannabis-producing laboratories in the town of Los Cedros. The United States has given billions of dollars to Mexico to support counter-narcotics operations. In February 2025, the Trump administration designated both the Sinaloa Cartel and its main rival, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, as foreign terrorist organizations. This designation allows for additional legal tools and sanctions against the cartels and anyone who provides them support. But here's the reality. As long as there's demand for drugs, particularly in the United States, and as long as systemic issues like corruption and poverty exist in Mexico, cartels will continue to operate and adapt. What do you think? Can organizations like the Sinaloa Cartel ever be completely eliminated? What would it take to truly end their operations? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up and share it with others who might be interested. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss future deep dives into fascinating and important stories.